How are you? Everyone good? Okay. We're having I think you all know that we have the roof off the temple, all the tiles off. We're redoing the roof. And we're also checking carpet samples in the different lights. So that's what was happening right now. Okay, we are on the very last 2 pages. And what I think we'll do is I'm going to read, there's an appendix that gives the teachings that Swami Trigunatita gave to Dhirananda, the really stern ones. He wanted her to take over when he, to stand firm. But I'd also like to read his last interview. It came out in the Voice of Freedom, and then we'll be finished with Swami Trigunatita. If you get out your books on God lived with them, they lived with God, the ones on the Direct Disciples by Swami Chaitanananda. I always get them confused. We have, I believe, 2 more Direct Disciples to briefly cover. I think we'll be doing next week Advaitananda. He was the oldest direct disciple that Ramakrishna made. So I think that's the one we'll be doing. Okay, we are starting, it's the chapter called Aftermath, and we are on page 290, the bottom of the page. On December 1st, in 1915, Swami Prakashananda returned to the temple, closing his center and bringing with him its members, who happily rejoined their old friends, all differences forgotten. On January 30th, 1916, in commemoration of Swami Trigunatita's birthday, Carl Peterson gave a talk to the membership in tribute to the great Swami. He said, "Friends, in commemoration of a man with the strongest of characters, a man who did not know the meaning of the word fail. There was no such word in his dictionary. A man who was truthful to a degree. A man who was not afraid of anything or anybody, whose every act, however it may have appeared to our eyes, was done with a great purpose, to teach his students. We who lived with him and knew him best knew his purpose. A man who had the courage of his own conviction and carried them through in spite of any opposition that could be offered. That was Swami Trigunatita. Anyone who was under Swami knew he had a kindly heart, an exceedingly kindly heart, but he treated us all differently, according to our state of development. The one he could treat harshly and the other he could not. He knew our true characters better than we knew them ourselves. Is it any wonder that a man with such terrific force as he possessed should make enemies? And why? Because we do not like to be told the truth. It hurts our ego. And that was one of the Swami's great lessons to us, to stand to be told the truth. All people with positive characters make enemies because they have the courage to tell the truth, and we cannot stand it. One of our members, Dhirananda, received lessons from the Swami which are inspired and will show the true character of the man when they are published. It was his desire that they should be published, and they will be in a short while when the manuscript is ready. There's a footnote on that. It has never been published before except in this book, and it's one of the appendices. And when you read that, you will surely know what terrific force that man was amongst us and amongst all who came in contact with him. He had energy enough for 50 men, and then enough left over for himself. He would work until 12, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and was up again at 4, morning after morning, with that poor sick body of his. Never faltered for an instant. Through all his sicknesses, he never remained in bed. That strong will, that energy that could not be broken by anything, that was Swami Trigunatita. I personally considered a great privilege that I was allowed to live in the same house with him for 12 years. I am a different man now. That is the truth. And the same can be said of hundreds of other people who came in contact with that terrific force, that strong character. We will never forget that force. That force will remain with us until we pass on as he did, born the 30th of January, 1865, passed the 10th of January, 1915. In April of 1916, a small band of devotees, led by Swami Prakashananda, made a pilgrimage to Shanti Ashram, where they had spent so many wonderful times with their teacher. They carried with them his ashes to inter them on the highest hill of the ashram, Siddhigiri, the hill of realization, where in 1912 the last Duni fire had burned throughout the night. Here on the summit, under the earthen triangle where the fire had had its bed, the urn was buried. Thus ended the founding era of the Vedanta Society of Northern California. But the force that was Swami Trigunatita could not end. Its genesis was the benign, saving aspect of the energy that lies behind creation itself, and which is brought to earth in periodic flares by those whom we call divine incarnations. In our era, Sri Ramakrishna brought that force to the human plane, or rather, for it is always here, channeled it as light is channeled and focused in a laser beam. How great that power was, how far-reaching in time and space, we cannot yet even imagine. For the full extent of the changes it will bring about lies still far in the future. As we said at the beginning of this book, the Vedanta Society of Northern California was thrice blessed. Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna's greatest apostle, carried his master's message and his immense spiritual power to the West. And in the last years of his mission to San Francisco, there he started the Vedanta Society of San Francisco, creating, as it were, the soil in which the age-old philosophy of Vedanta could take root and grow, as a seed grows a mighty tree. After him came Swami Trigunatita to develop the society, and gently, but nonetheless powerfully, to nurture it. And then, like a whirlwind, came Swami Trigunatita, himself a son of Sri Ramakrishna, a dynamo of spiritual strength, determined to nourish and give shape to the young seedling of Swamiji's planting. He succeeded. The Vedanta Society to which he gave his life, which he formed and strengthened, and into which he unceasingly poured the tremendous power of a divine incarnation, has itself become an undying spiritual force. That was his gift to the West, his blessing. And such blessings, coming virtually straight from the source, are here to stay. Life and death went on. On Christmas Eve of 1916, dear Nanda suddenly died, less than 2 years after the passing of the Swami. Carl Peterson died in 1924. Clinton French, after making a successful life for himself as a printer in the town of Concord, died in 1920. Kara French made a visit to India in 1925 and eventually returned to San Francisco. Ida Ansel moved to Southern California in 1924 and later became closely allied with the Vedanta Society there. The Wahlbergs and the Allens lived to a ripe old age, the men serving as president or vice president of the society in San Francisco for many years. Following Albert Wahlberg's death in 1945, Ernest C. Brown, who outlived them all, became president. Swami Prakashananda guided the society until his death on February 1927. Swami Dayananda took his place until June of that year, when Swami Madhavananda took charge. In May of 1929, that's interesting, Swami Madhavananda was one of the Swamis who came to dedicate this temple in 1957. He came with Swami Nirvanananda. Nirvanananda? Suji Maharaj was what we all called him. So in May of 1929, Swami Madhavananda returned to India, and Swami Dayananda again took charge of the society and was its spiritual leader until July of 1931, when Swami Vivedishananda succeeded him. Because of his ill health, Swami Vivedishananda moved to Boston in the summer of 32 and was succeeded by Swami Ashokananda, who had been his assistant. After 1932, the membership of this society, now the Vedanta Society of Northern California, and its congregation increased 4 or 5-fold under the leadership of Swami Ashokananda. 2 branch temples were built in Berkeley and Sacramento. A 200-acre summer retreat was purchased at Lake Tahoe, and the property for a large year-round retreat was purchased in Marin County near San Francisco. That's Olima. The monastery doubled its average membership. A convent was strongly established. And because the old Hindu temple was too small to accommodate the growing society, a new temple was built nearby and dedicated in 1959. After Swami Ashokananda's death in December of 1969, Swami Shanta Sarupananda was in charge for a brief period. Swami Prabodhananda became the society's spiritual leader in December 1970, and the expansion of the society has continued to the date of this writing. Its foundation, as we said, had been built to last. Okay, are there any questions about any of that? Okay, if you'd like to go to page 419, this is Voice of Freedom, an interview with the late Swami Trigunatita from the Evening Post in San Francisco. Upon arriving at the study of Swami Trigunatita, the scholarly priest of the morning services greeted his visitor in the Oriental manner at the door of the Hindu temple. Our cordiality is spiritual, and our greeting is the same. I see in you a child of the same God, whose mind creates both. I open my mind, my soul to you, so I bow reverently, recognizing in you our spiritual relationship, explained the Swami, after the preliminaries of the meeting had been stated. So you would like to know what Vedanta is, said the Swami. It is neither scripture nor a code of laws. It is not a religion or a system of philosophy, for it is the philosophy of all philosophies, the science of all sciences. It is not made by man or prophet or even God. It is not made at all. It is ever existent, embracing the sun, moon, the stars, and all the universe. The Vedanta establishes the place of man in the world permanently. Mankind has ever desired to ascertain his place in relation to the universe. The true Vedantist recognizes God in everything, and he can sacrifice his life with the greatest pleasure, if need be, for the purpose of realizing the truth. Self is the only substance existing, and when we recognize this, we easily rise above envy, jealousy, hate, greed, and the like. We do not teach crude, visionary ideas. The true followers of the Vedas, once understanding its immutable laws, improve their mental, moral, social, political, and even physical conditions. Whenever we cast our eyes over this rich and prosperous country, we find people from the highest to the lowest rank of life groaning under the burden of overwork, unrest, worry, anxiety, and ceaseless hurry. The poorer classes hold the ideal of the middle, the ladder of the millionaire, of the multimillionaire, and so on. And the latter, even though possessed of far more wealth than he could possibly utilize, even if his life was prolonged much beyond the ordinary allotment, reaches out to possess the wealth of other nations. No one is content. Men are so beset by the canker of constant demand for more and more and more that the thought of this eats up their vitality, destroys their mental and physical equilibrium, and they lose sight of their spirituality entirely. Owing to this constant unrest, the Western people fail to understand themselves because they possess not the first idea of the philosophy of life. This is one of the evils of modern civilization, the inevitable result of a system built on ideals such as the Western world adheres to. True civilization, which is based upon moral and spiritual standards, forms the inner nature of man, impelling him to obey the spiritual and moral laws of a higher plane of existence than the commercial one. Surely a civilization which encourages deceit, avarice, ambition, jealousy, the utmost lawlessness in competition, will not lead a nation to enduring greatness, nor bring happiness to its people. Occidental civilization, as one sees it flowering in this country and in Europe, is complex beyond all degree. Needs are so increased that mankind slaves to death to provide these artificial necessities. In this country, the vast majority of people live to eat and to drink, to wear costly garments according to changes of fashion, and these lead to insatiable desire to live the life of the senses. They never learn that the more we gratify our needs, the more they increase. The problem of food and clothing is most formidable in those of ample means, and so on, until, with many, it is the sum and aim of life. Missionaries from this country and Europe go to India to set an example of their complex life, glorifying it as a part of religion, forgetting possibly that Jesus was an Oriental, and therefore, like all spiritual teachers among the Orientals, he lived a simple life, always trusting in his heavenly Father, who cares even for the sparrows of the air. One finds many true disciples of Christ among the so-called heathens of India, and very few among the so-called Christians of the Occident. However, a simple life does not necessarily imply that one must forsake the world, go to live in the woods or in caves, but it does mean absolute obedience to the laws that immutably govern our mental, moral, spiritual, and physical being. When we violate these laws, it leads to confused complexity of living, which produces disease, vice, ignorance, slavery to passion, and worship of mammon. Again, simplicity does not mean only outward plainness of garment, meager diet, a modest dwelling. It means self-control, which makes one master over nature. Simplicity is the result of the highest education, the most vigilant moral and spiritual training of the soul. Simplicity of soul inspires us to love and feel for others as we love and feel for ourselves. This you may see for yourself is far from the Occidental ideal. Still, a Vedantist is an individualist, believing thoroughly in the development of the individual. But the ideal of development differs. Jesus is regarded as the ideal of mankind. His philosophy is admitted to be without flaw, said the Swami, and continued with the statement that Christ of the Christian religion was but one of the several teachers of Vedanta philosophy, who from time to time dwell among mankind, such beings being regarded as perfected souls sent to deliver mankind from its ignorance. Broadly charitable, Swami Trigunatita declared that according to the ancient faith of his fathers, it included all religions. The sincere following of any faith with a strong and ardent purpose to advance morally, mentally, and spiritually is the main and primary principle of Vedantism. They believe that all such plans, even though differing in manner, help society and improve the world in the long run. They teach that nothing should bind one, should submerge the personality of the individual, who must stand free, unhampered, if progress is to be attained. Since the first man began thinking about his surroundings, mankind has been trying to solve the ills of life. The heaven of the future, beyond the skies, is not very satisfactory to mature minds, unless they may have a glimpse of it in this life. This problem of realizing heaven in this life, here and now, is all important to Vedanta philosophy. We have evolved from the animal plane to the human plane. The next step is to evolve into the divine plane. All of the universe, this world of ours included, is but the playground of God. In those whom we love, we see reflected all the virtues and beauties of mind and heart, which all, even those of least illumination, admire and desire. As we see God in them, so must our love develop and grow until we see this beauty, this godliness in others, until our vision embraces all humanity and all creation. Gradually, this world, which is mistakenly called a vale of tears and a place of irredeemable misery, will be transformed into an abode of true happiness. This is the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. And when Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," it must have been this which he meant. And that was the last interview with Swami Trigunatita. Now, any questions or discussions? As I say, next week, which is it? They lived with God or God lived with them? God lived with them. I always get it confused. But it's the dark brown cover, and it says, yes, that's the one. What is it, Sunanda?
God lived with them.
God lived with them. And I believe we're going to be doing Swami Advaitananda. Okay? This Saturday, we have Swami Sarvadevananda with his Bhagavad Gita class on the 11th, which is also Karma Yoga Day. And any of you that can get to Karma Yoga Day, you are most welcome. Come down to the convent around anytime between 9 and 9:30, and we'll assign work. We'll find our jobs. We'll have a cup of coffee and get started. And we won't be outside if it's 80 degrees. We'll find some inside work. So Karma Yoga Day, 9:15 to noon, and then we all have lunch together. 5 o'clock, here in the temple, Swami Sarvadevananda's Bhagavad Gita class. And then his lecture on Sunday the 12th will be Finding Guidance in a Distracting World. That sounds really good. I think any of you that heard Grief and Spiritual Life last week with Swami Mahayogananda, it was highly inspiring. So that's our schedule from now on for the next week.